Hey, welcome, AP Government. This is going to be our crash course video on Unit 2, which is such a just a fun, easy unit to cover before we get to Unit 3, which is going to be a little more complicated, looking at more things like PACs and parties and whatnot in general election. This one we're kind of looking at political behaviors. So I'm literally going to just run through this. Okay, maybe not literally because that would be stupid, but I'm going to run through this material pretty quickly, and then I'll give you guys a test like we did on Unit 1 to see how you can do on it, okay? And I'll make sure to give you an answer key so you can actually see how you did and the answers for that, okay, for this next one. Okay, let's get into it. I like to kind of discuss a little bit things of key terminology with you all. So political culture are those widely held beliefs. In a democratic society, which is what we are, your culture is going to be more or less socialized. It's carried out to you by your family, the views that you believe and whatnot. An authoritarian regime like China, Iran, is going to be more state driven. But in America, we're very, more localized and much more family. We have different media, those kind of things. So political socialization is that process by which you've been shaped and formed your political beliefs. Okay. Political culture are those kind of widely held beliefs like we have in America. They always like to ask you this one. In America, we do not value equality of outcome, but equality of opportunity, right? For political socialization, the media can be an element of socialization, but because we're so inundated with media, we have all sorts of selective perception, meaning I'm only going to like perceive things from the news story that backs up my belief. Or if it's selective exposure, I'm only going to watch news that supports my own belief, right? And then you kind of get into like a little bit of a vacuum of news, and so you don't get other outside, sources. Political ideology, that's just basically the overall belief system that you have, right? So looking at number 10 here, party identification in the United States is most successfully transmitted by which of the following? Yes, that's right. E, the family. Okay, cool. So there's my family. I think I showed you this before. Some outdated pictures, but still, I mean, I've got some darn cute kids. So just, soak on, that for a little bit, and you can see, hey, Mr. Matthews is very, very blessed. So, all right. I'm going to skip over this for now. So I would always ask you guys, like, are you a Republican or you a Democrat? And like, what would it take you to switch parties, right? And like, you'd be like, that'd be a lot, right? For me to switch parties? Are you kidding me? My family is this, right? That's because you've been socialized, right? So that kind of shows you where your beliefs are. And you being a 17, 18-year-old kid, you're probably pretty molded in your political values. Now, that could change for sure as you get older. But what you believe right now is probably pretty hardened and true and who you are. So political culture. So a couple of things unique about American political culture. We do have like this term efficacy. Efficacy is like used to determine like how much impact you have on an election. So if I'm a Republican and I live in California, I don't have much political efficacy when it comes to a presidential election because that's going to go, blue team. It's going to go Democrats. Just like if I'm a Democrat and I live, in Alaska, I don't have a lot of political efficacy because that's probably going to go more Republican, right? I mean, solidly Republican. Okay. So we could take a look at, again, efficacy is the ability to impact something. Legitimacy, you know this one. This is all comparative government, right? Government's right to rule and some of those other terms there. Okay, just some examples here. I want you to know conservatism is all about small economic matters. A lot of times in the course, they're going to use Reagan as an example. Liberalism, they're going to use examples from like LBJ or from Obama to kind of show more about government involvement in economic matters and maybe less on moral matters, things relating to legalizing drugs, abortion, gay marriage, like historical things we look at that are considered to be more social issues. Libertarians are just across the board. They want more liberty. They want more freedom. Think of Milton Friedman, and I'll put that name up there. Milton Friedman is a classic libertarian, and you always see something on the AP exam with Milton Friedman's name on it, and he's all about liberty. Okay. All right, so this is kind of showing you the overall political spectrum. We're just skip over this for now. This is easy, right? Like who typically votes for Republicans and Democrats? We're pretty divided in this country, and it's not difficult to kind of know who's Republicans or Democrat, right? You live in the South, you go to church, you're Protestant, probably more Republican, right? You are an African American, you're younger, you live in the city, you're a woman, probably more Democrat, right? So they like to ask you those kind of questions of like who would typically be a more Republican voter and whatnot. Issues is also something that's pretty, like, again, we're divided on. So we can look at a lot of this, but I'm not going to talk about major issues. But like some of these comes up, right? You need to know that Democrats are more in favor of LGBTQ rights, more so than Republicans. Democrats are more in favor of maybe having like bigger government responsible for providing more like social welfare programs than are Republicans. Republicans are more, self-determination kind of people, pull yourself up by your own bootstrap kind of thing. So we can definitely take a look at a lot of comparisons. I think the big one is obviously Democrats want more change and like to see more change. Republicans are conservative, meaning they like the system as it is. They don't want to change. They like to keep tradition. Here's a quick question for you. Which one is conservative? Which one's liberal? And I like using this because this is a great kind of way you can understand how the AP exam is going to be set up, right? So look at your options there. Which one's conservative? Which one's liberal? Conservative perspective is definitely going to be, okay, well, maybe it's B, but then you go over here, like, well, no, that's not really a liberal position because liberals want more gun control, right? So it wouldn't be B, but that would be a close one. Look at letter D. Individuals should not rely on government aid for economic well-being. Well, that's conservative. And the liberal position is that they're going to be more responsible for providing low income and aid for low income citizens. That would definitely be right, right? So D is your correct answer because it crosses over both of them. And that's where you see yes on the right answer. Okay, so here we go. Which of the following would be most likely to vote in Republican primary? What do you think? A, B, C, D, or E? Yes, the answer is E, a 45-year-old white businessman from South Carolina who attends church weekly. That's a check, right? Who also doesn't like to wear a mask, right, or something, right? Doesn't want the vaccine. Right? No, I'm just kidding. No, but you can see, like, yes, there's a lot of things that can divide us and whatnot. Okay, voter turnout tends to be highest among. So this is something I didn't talk about just yet, but there's 3 areas that you can see a lot of correlation with how often you vote. Okay, the more money you have, the older you are, and the more education you have. Right, so I'll kind of write those out there again. So again, we're looking at age, we're looking at more money, income, and then the more education. Okay, I'll make sure to spell that correctly because that would be just ironic if I misspelled education. Okay, so that would be college educated voters would be 25 for that answer. Okay, I'll skip over this. So who typically votes? Typically, we have low voter turnout in America. It's just the truth. Outside of 2020 election, we normally have about 50 to 60% turnout. There's a lot of reasons for that. Apathy. Some people just feel like it doesn't count. They're just not interested. But I will say this couple things. We do have the motor voter law. The motor voter law was passed in 1993, and that lets you register to vote at the DMV to make it a little bit easier for you. We also have, again, absentee and early voting, and we definitely saw that in 2020 with a lot of people being able to vote early, vote absentee, and that made turnout much higher. You can also have on here, I don't have it on this slide, but the Voting Rights Act in 1965, that's going to end a lot of those discriminatory policies against African Americans in the Deep South. So it brought about a brand new electorate that we're going to see really America, like in the full capacity of elections. We start to look at 1968 as a good example because that's the first time you have a federal election, a national election after the Voting Rights Act in 1965 that basically got rid of all those policies that basically prevented African Americans and low-income citizens from voting. Okay? Typically, primaries are not going to have as much voter turnout as a general election. A general election is the one that happens every 2 years. It's the major election. A primaries election is where you have it like within your party. We'll talk about this in the next video, but this is like, open primary, closed primary stuff. Presidential versus midterm, definitely a lot more turnout on presidential than midterm elections. Okay. People who typically don't vote, now this is kind of tricky because it changes, but definitely the younger people typically don't vote, unmarried, unskilled. People live in the South. People live in more rural parts of America than urban parts don't typically vote. And typically more men than women typically don't vote. So sorry, I have a picture of Tony Romo up here, just a throwback picture from back in the day, right? An unskilled man who lives in the South. What up, bumps? Not just kidding. My Redskins didn't do much better. So, throw a picture of Alex Smith up there too, I guess. But all right, voter or non-voter? So we would say, yeah, they're voters, right? They're married, right? I guess voter. He looks educated, sure. Definitely voter, right? We see more women. Now, this is 100% like, stereotypical. But there we go. Probably more of a non-voter if we're going to go based on those trends. Maybe non-voter based on younger people, but again, things change. And then there's Ethel. Ethel, she works at the polls, right? She's the one who helps to check your name in. You better believe she's a voter, right? Old people and age is of high correlation to voting. Okay. All right, I'm going to skip over this one for now. It's just kind of a quick overview. Well, I guess we can look at it real quickly. It says identify the effect of one of the following amendments. Remember, the 15th Amendment allowed all men to vote. The 19th Amendment allowed all women to vote. The 26th Amendment is going to allow 18-year-olds to vote. Okay. Yes, explain the effect each has had on voter turnout. Motor voter laws has definitely increased voter turnout. Photo ID laws have made it more difficult for people who don't have a driver's license to vote. Select one of the following demographic features describes relationship to the likelihood of a person voting. Yeah, the more education you have, the more likely you are to vote, right? Same with age. Okay. And then explain why turnout's different. That's just too easy, right? More people are going to vote in a presidential than midterm in a general election as opposed to a primary. Okay, here we go. So we got a lot of obstacles to voting. We can look at some things that are going to kind of make it difficult to vote, whether it's voter registration, winner take all. I would say, like, historically, it was a single day election, which made it difficult for working class members to vote and whatnot. And again, typically people who are younger don't typically vote. Okay. All right, I'm going to skip over some of this, skip over some of this. Okay, let's look at polls real quickly. So when we talk about polling, I want you to know a couple of key things about polling. Now that we're looking for accuracy to determine the validity of a poll, we want to see the margin of errors and we want to see how many people actually took the poll. In addition, it's good to know maybe how that poll was given, right? Was it given online where it's not very verified, or was it given in person where you maybe allowed to have a little bit more check to make sure the age and the demographic questions are what you know they are. So take a look at this question here. This is a quantitative question. One that you guys have answered before, but it basically says identify one trend in the 2008 presidential campaign depicted in the graph. Right. So basically, in this graph, we're going to see Obama, McCain. Obama's going to constantly lead McCain. Right. So that's going to be a trend. Obama's constantly in the lead. Identify two pieces of information you would need to decide whether or not this is a valid poll. Again, I said you need the margin of error. You also need to know the number of people that actually were participating, right? Because what the margin of error is like 10%, then this poll is trash, right? It doesn't mean anything if it can go 10% either way. So you just explain why that's important in evaluating the poll. It's pretty easy. Explain how one of the following factors may have influenced an individual's response. This gets back to political socialization, right? Like your family and the beliefs and practices and whatnot could have an influence on that. Okay. I'm going to skip over some of these for now. Let's take a look at the last little bit here. How could you do looking at elections, which is going to be our last section here. Based on the results shown at the table, which candidate won the election? And of course, you're taking a look here at only the Electoral College votes. This does not matter. It doesn't matter at all in the big scheme of things. Obviously, you lose legitimacy if you lose that. But this is the only thing that we look at to determine who wins that election. Okay. All right. So which of the following is a consequence of candidate-centered campaigns? We're talking about campaigns that are more based on like people as opposed to party and individuals. This is going to definitely be letter D, right? Candidates, it's more of a popularity contest, right? You're going to appeal more towards voters as opposed to experience and policy issues. Okay. Yeah, we did that one already. Cool. I'm going to skip over that. Let's talk about Chapter 7, political behaviors. We're rolling. There's a lot of forms you can do to participate in elections. You can vote. You can do grassroots movement, which is basically like a bottom-up movement. Think of like, Black Lives Matter or the Tea Party movement. That's very much a bottom-up movement. The Me Too movement, very bottom-up, right? You can work on a campaign. You can also donate money, and that's what we'll get to in the next big unit. Will be Unit 3. You can also run for office to participate, right? You can definitely protest. Okay, let's skip over some of this. So let's get to the Electoral College. I think it's my last little bit here. The Electoral College, again, why do we have an Electoral College? It was definitely something the framers wanted, right? Fear of the common man, right? They were fearful of letting the people have a direct say over the president. So that's kind of what the Electoral College is. They're a check on the people. The number of electors equals like the number of ones you have in the House plus the number of members in the Senate you have, right? So like for Virginia, we have 11 in the House and 2 in the Senate. That gives us 13. For the total electors, like 538, but that's 435, that's 100, and then DC gives you 3. That's why you need 270 to win. Okay, so what happens basically as a result of the Electoral College, candidates are really going to focus on getting to the Electoral, like 270. That's what they focus on, right? They're not necessarily trying to get to win the most states. They just want to get to 270. So they always look at the swing states, right? The swing states are the one that are really, really important. Now, all states are going to have this whole winner take all system, meaning like if it's like election between Trump and Biden, and Trump gets like 49% and Biden gets 51. In Virginia, Biden still wins all 13, right? Because it's just a winner take all. Except for Maine and Nebraska. Maine and Nebraska basically award their House votes. So you vote in a congressional district, and that sends your electoral college votes to a candidate, right? And we can talk about maybe reforming the electoral college here in just a little bit. Here's showing you kind of the dangers of the electoral college in some ways, and that it's not always going to reflect the popular will, right? Look at 1992. Ross Perot got close to 20% of the vote. Yet how many electoral college votes did he get? He got zippo because he didn't win a single state, and that's the winner-take-all system, right? You can look at other elections here where people don't necessarily win with 50%, like 1968 is another one, right? And again, I mean, look at Nixon. He only got 43% of the votes, yet he got 301 electoral college votes. How is that possible? Because again, he won states. He didn't necessarily win the entire population. So we've seen a couple of elections where, probably many elections actually, like 2016 is another one, where the popular vote winner does not actually win. Okay, what does it reveal about America's government? Definitely federalism. The states are the ones who send the electors. Winner take all system, fear of the common man. Absolutely. All those check. Amendments that deal with the Electoral College. You have the 12th Amendment, you have the 23rd Amendment. The 12th Amendment is going to basically say that the vice president and the president are going to be on the same ticket. So that's a big one. The 23rd Amendment deals with, again, the DC 23. Pauses the Electoral College. It basically means that like small states get to have a say. If it's you're competitive, you can have a better chance of being appealed towards or lobbied by the candidates to come and speak to you. Okay? It does try to provide for that like equal representation, kind of for, if you will, like the states, just not the people in the states per se. It's a little tricky. The next Electoral College is it could go against the popular vote, right? It's an old system. It's antiquated. It maybe needs to be done away with, right? Because we have a system that checks the American public. Why not just do popular vote? Well, the pushback against that is then the populated states would just dominate, right? I mean, you can win an election with just by winning 11 states or something. So you're going to have an imbalance based on the population there. Okay. And again, you want to focus on the swing states. Okay. So there's a little bit of details on the swing states. I'm going to skip over some of this. And I think last little bit here is the media. Okay. We covered that. By the way, like here's just some reform of the Electoral College. Again, we did this before, so I'm not too particularly concerned that you know about this. But the congressional district plan is how it works. Proportional allocation is just basically like percentage. Of course, the bad thing about this is it's bad math. I mean, what if you have 3 Electoral College votes? You got to basically like multiply every single state by like 10 to be able to do this effectively. The direct election plan, you basically say the direct vote, but the flaw is you got to have an amendment. You got to get rid of the Electoral College. And that's not easy to do, right? That's 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of the states. I like the national bonus plan. This is the one where you basically say, we're going to give 102 extra Electoral College vote winners votes to the winner of the popular votes. So therefore, you basically are going to be the one who you will always win if you essentially win the popular vote. That's my favorite. Okay, skip over that. So the media, you guys know what the media is all about. You're inundated with media. I will say this. Obviously, the media is becoming more electronic, more internet savvy. We are definitely being inundated with more news, but this also leads to more bias, right? We can have like the confirmation bias, where I just constantly get news feed that backs up my own belief. So it makes me more polarized. And I think there's good evidence that the media is helping to kind of lead in that direction of breaking apart America from being more centralist to now being more divided, because the media is getting more polarizing in many ways too. So definitely there's a couple things the media does. They play a couple roles. The gatekeeper role is changing, meaning that we don't go to the news anymore to know what the news is. We go to social media, right? And then the news usually follows behind. The news can also play like a watchdog role, and that's when they do like investigative journalism. And then you have the scorekeeper role. That's basically where they're basically saying, here is essentially what the poll numbers are, right? Horse race journalism, who's on first, that kind of thing. Hey guys, I'm just about done. I will say this, that the very last bit, you got to know horse race journalism. In America, we don't really care about issues. We care about drama and entertainment. So I would much rather, watch a clip of, Trump bashing candidates, or watch, Biden attacking people, if you will, more so than like hearing them discuss their healthcare plans. Oh, please, right? But sadly, that's kind of where the media goes to as well, right? They're going to cater more towards that drama and that kind of direction as opposed to actually substantive issues that are meaningful. You need to have those, but this is where, again, we're not trying to be a super informed public. We like to be a super entertained public. And therein lies some of the problems. Okay, sorry, my own bias is kicking in here. I will be quiet. Hopefully, this helps you guys understand Unit 2 a little bit better. We'll stop there for the day, and good luck to you guys as you take Unit 2 test. See you guys. Bye.